This is the new Weight Watchers, built for real life and real results, no matter what mode you're in. Maddie went all in for her big day and lost 33 pounds. Emily lost 85 pounds and hit her goal while still living her life.
Weight Watchers gave me the tools and I feel amazing.
Join the millions of members and lose weight with the #1 doctor-recommended weight loss program. Lose more at WeightWatchers.com.
At 6 months, participants in a clinical trial of Weight Watchers program lost an average of 12 pounds.
Told a lot of lies about achievement. They called you when they got you to believe it. Thumb and finger held to their foreheads in an L shape. Trapped in a capitalist hellscape. Let's fight back and have some talks about class and the massive cost of the disastrous plots of fascists and Nazis, fat cats and fox. It's 1,000 natural shocks. A Bad with Money podcast.
Hello and welcome to 1,000 Natural Shocks, a Bad with Money podcast. I'm your host, Gabe Dunn, and with me today we have the next mayor of Los Angeles, if anyone has any sense. Rae, do you want to tell my audience who you are and what you do?
Sure. Hey, everybody. I'm Rae Huang. I am a community organizer. I'm a pastor of a very progressive denomination, the Presbyterian Church USA, that does ordain LGBTQ and women, which I'm very proud about. Others, I would not be able to be ordained. And I'm a mother of 2 girls here in Los Angeles.
So you were just talking about, we met way in the beginning of your campaign. And I know this, but I wanted people to hear, what brought you to running for mayor?
I'm running for mayor because I've been a community organizer here in Los Angeles for over a decade now, and working with community organizations and neighbors on solutions that we need here in the city, because what's happening is not working for us, right? We still don't have affordable housing. We still struggle with being able to afford our groceries. We still struggle with good health care. We still struggle with good, meaningful jobs where you only need to have one job that pays enough money for us to be able to live here. Gas is skyrocketing. It's so hard to survive here in Los Angeles. And so as a mom and local neighbor, I've been working my pants off to be able to survive for my children and I on our own, and also to support our neighbors, because I grew up in a village mentality. My parents were immigrants from Taiwan. And so we grew up having to support each other on our own through our church community, which is what brought me to become a pastor. So I've always grown up and continue to live my life in a way where we need to support each other like a small village, where we care about each other and care for each other. And so together we've been solving the problems that City Hall has not been solving for us, because they've not been doing enough. And what I've actually found in working in the political arena and in advocacy work is a lot of times our city leaders are not grounded in the solutions of communities. And so we need to be the ones to provide that. But the challenge is, so we would provide those solutions, we would create those opportunities to help us be able to succeed and solve our problems. But then City Hall ends up walking backwards and not actually walking with us in the solutions that we created on our own. And case in point, right, Measure A, Measure ULA, these are all examples, raising the living wage through the Olympic wages that we passed recently, lowering our rent cap in tenants' rights. These are things that we worked on, that we passed. But time and time again, what we're seeing is that our electeds, together being influenced by corporations, by big money, they end up cutting back on what we need, and we're unable to move forward. And so I'm running for office because it's time that we actually have somebody from the community in office who wants to partner in co-governance with Angelenos to solve our problems. And that's why I'm running for office today.
Yeah, it's been really alarming in the last year that I've become more involved in local advocacy and politics in Los Angeles, how much I misunderstood what these people in office were able to do, and how disheartening it has been, where I would bring something and I would be told, well, I have to put together the information and send it to the city council member, let's say, for example. And I would often think, well, what is your job then? You mentioned this. It's been confusing to wonder what changed from somebody running for office versus how they behave and vote in office.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, it's money or it's lobbying or it's something. I don't know, but it's been incredibly frustrating and confusing to see some talking the talk but not walking the walk.
Right. And look, there are multiple ways that I think about this. One is a lot of us, if you will, liberals, right? And I probably wouldn't even count myself a liberal. I probably count myself a progressive or radical or revolutionary, probably. A lot of perspectives of those in office believe that, well, we can't really change anything. We need a compromise, right? We hear that a lot, right? From a lot of liberal electeds, that we need to compromise and that's how we're going to get anything done. But the reality is that never really happened to begin with. There's not that much about compromise, but even more so in this moment, in this very divisive moment, you cannot compromise your values, full stop. And what we've seen is we've seen people like Donald Trump being able to take office and he doesn't compromise for shit. And he's just plowing down on everybody. He doesn't care what they think. He's just going to do what he wants. And so for people who think, look, you have to compromise to get what you want, the reality is you need to have somebody with moral courage to be able to demand and force us to move in a direction where we can finally ensure that working families and working people will be seen as a priority in a system where they have never been a priority.
Yeah, it's it's never been done before, or, well, that's just the way it is, or.
Exactly.
And I often say to people who say that, I go, I hope one day you can dream of a better world.
Yeah, if we don't fight for it, we will never change it. If we don't, I say this all the time now. It's an organizing quote, one of those statements that we use to remind us, right, of our theory of change, which is you only get what you are organized to take. You only get what you organize to take. So you have to organize towards what we need and what we want. You have to fight for it. And if you don't, then you won't get it. So the idea that we can only reform a system that's not working for us doesn't work for me. People ask me all the time now, so what's exactly the difference between you and Councilmember Rahman and also Mayor Bass? Like, what actually is the major difference? And what I tell them is that Mayor Bass is running a system badly. Councilmember Rahman wants to reform that bad system into maybe a slightly better system. And I am saying that system does not work for you and me. I'm so sorry. That system was never designed to be able to work for you and me. That's the problem. So we have to fundamentally change the system altogether. And that's why I'm advocating for things like social housing. Why am I fighting for social housing? What is social housing? Social housing is permanent affordable housing because it is publicly or community owned. It's not in the speculative market being bought and sold by private investors and private individuals. It is permanently owned by the public or the community. And when you have enough social housing, it is able to stabilize, which means you're stabilizing the prices of real estate. Then you stabilize real estate as a whole. It's no longer a place where we're only relegating it for just profit reasons, but we create a standard that housing should be and is, for us, in my value, a human right. And so if we fundamentally change the system of real estate so that's not only for profit, but it's for human beings so that we can use it to live and sleep and work, right? We also want to talk about commercial rents, by the way, right? We want to be able to ensure that small businesses have places, have brick and mortar so they can sell their products and provide their services. I'm so sad because I just heard my gym that I work out at, and I have such a beautiful, amazing community, and it's been such an important space for me in my life, is closing. This is the second gym that's closed on me over the last 5 years.
Mine closed
because,
too.
Yeah. I mean, like, this is where we're at. By the way, I've talked to so many small businesses now that are closing or at the brink of closing. It's like all over. Land is not for us. Land is for capital. Well, what if we were to fundamentally change it and say, how about we make land for human needs first? If we were to shift that change, for example, Vienna, Austria, 40% of their land is social housing. So it's stabilized their real estate market. It doesn't mean that there's not private ownership, but it means enough of it is stabilized so there is enough affordable opportunities and options for people who live in Vienna. So if you wanted to move, you don't have to stay forever in your only rent-controlled apartment that you'll never get again, so you're stuck with that situation for the rest of your life. It means you could be like, oh, I think I'm going to move closer to my mom. Or, you know what, I'm going to move in with my partner to a new place and get a bigger place. Or I want to have a career change, so I'm going to move into another part of town. You won't feel stuck and have to do that like 3-hour commute to and from work to be able to pursue your career. or to spend time with your family or to go to school, right? You can actually have options, right? So social housing is one example. Another is a public bank. What if we were
Yes.
able to not be stuck relying on the private market to provide those loans? They own us. They own where we live. Now they're going to own our investments, all of our extra dollars that we put aside for retirement. They get to own where it goes and how to use it.
Yeah.
They already own where we drive. They own what we eat, like, so what if we were to pull some of that back, have our own public bank so that the city could provide those investments and reinvest back into the community. So we could actually invest into our infrastructure and the returns come back to us, invest in small businesses and ensure that we can provide those smaller loans and actually provide them with what they need so they can do big dreams, right?
Yeah.
And those vendors who could, finally have a micro loan to just get a new business started, right? Like, what if we were to be able to have our own control of our lives in our city again? That's the fundamental change that I'm trying to make as someone running for office.
How would social housing work?
I'm so proud to say that over the last 6 years, I've been working specifically on social housing and expanding it here in the city, in the county, and the state. We have community land trust coalitions who are helping support this progress to support community land trusts. We have a housing hub to be able to provide the technical assistance for developers and for residents to learn how to manage their own buildings. We have La Casa, which is a independent department in the county that is a one-stop shop for affordable housing developers to be able to get funding, because a lot of the reason why it takes so long to build and it costs so much money is because as affordable housing developers, you have to go to so many different pots of money to pull it together to be able to build. And every single time you get a new pocket of money, it's extra time, months, and it's extra money, hundreds and thousands of dollars. And so if we were to cut all of that down and you build faster and you are able to find the revenue, the funding that you need faster, it means that you can build faster and build cheaper, right? And so we've built up these options already. So we have funding, we have revenue coming down through Measure A and Measure ULA, through also state revenue, to be able to build truly affordable housing. And then we have, like I said, technical assistance to support them to build these resident managed communities and buildings. There are opportunities then for us to be able to acquire housing that is going to no longer be affordable. So for those who are not as much in the know, right now, the main way that we build affordable housing is through providing LIHTC, which is low income housing tax credits, to developers to build affordable housing. It only has a 55-year covenant. So that means you maybe provide 20% of your building affordable for 55 years or 80% of your building for 55 years. But after 55 years, it now goes to market rate. And the problem is if every 55 years you roll over and you now lose more units to market rate, then you have to find new units to provide for affordable housing. So it's basically like a leaky bucket, right? And so what social housing does is it says, let's stop that leaky bucket and let's actually provide housing for the long term. Let's make sure that all of the buildings we have are owned by the public, owned by the communities. And that, so it could be either public housing, which we're familiar with the model, is a successful form of providing affordable, permanent housing for those who need it. I had a wonderful conversation, it's online actually, my social media, with a tenant who talked about the fact that she had been living there for decades with her children, raised her children in that unit, and she was a victim of domestic violence. And that was a saving space for her to be able to be a single mom and raise her children. And she still, as a senior, lives there today.
Wow.
Had it not been for public housing, she wouldn't be there today. So public housing is the model. Community land trusts are stewards of land. Co-ops are another form of social housing. There's a lot of variation. And by the way, social housing doesn't look just like apartments. It could be a townhome. It could be single family homes. It just means that the land is owned by or stewarded by a community entity, whether a nonprofit or a community land trust or the public. And the building itself can be either owned by the residents themselves. So it's kind of like a mobile home park where the resident owns their mobile home,
right,
but the land is not theirs. Or you can rent, just like, and again, mobile home parks, sometimes you rent a mobile home that's not yours. But the difference is that because there's no interest to profit off of you as a tenant, it means that you are forever stabilized and you could live there forever. And I'll tell you, in other countries, when you rent social housing, because there's no incentive to raise your rent, you could live there your whole life. There's strong tenant protections. You're never going to get kicked out. So you have the same stability as a homeowner. And that changes the calculus because so much in our country, we see tenants as second class housing residents. That is unacceptable. That is completely unacceptable. They have consumer rights to be able to have good, healthy housing. So how do we change that? Let's change the structure of what the goal of housing should be.
Wow. I gotta say, I didn't prior to this fully understand it, and now I do. So thank you.
Great. I'm so glad.
So I wanted to ask about a couple other things that I wrote down. For housing specifically, you talk about eliminating some red tape. I know there's been a lot of issues with Mayor Bass's Inside Safe program, notably not wanting to be audited, but also in terms of if it's effective. And so I was wondering if you could walk me through for yourself, how a homeless person would be taken off the streets if you were mayor. What red tape is there that we're not seeing?
To be able to be put inside Safe or inside our or get access to our programs and our services, you have to go through a lot of rigmarole in the administrative cycle. You have to provide your IDs, you have to be in the system. A lot of times we actually don't know what available housing there is available, what SROs, which is single residency occupancy rooms, are available. And so it's a long process, and a lot of people who are unhoused struggle to be able to retain their IDs. I don't know about you, but when you accidentally lose your wallet or someone steals it, or you have to renew your ID and you're like, oh shoot, I need to go to the DMV and then stand in line for hours and hours. It takes a long time. And when you're unhoused and you don't have a permanent place to put your stuff and keep it safe, you lose your ID and your stuff all the time. And that's one of the issues actually with sweeps that we see in the streets, right? With the Care Plus program, which is that they take all of the belongings of the people who are living on the streets and they just crush it up in this incinerator, basically. It's kind of like a paper, what are those things that you put your paper in it?
Shredder?
It's like a paper shredder.
Ugh.
It's horrible. They basically take people's tents, their belongings, all their things, and they just put it through a gigantic, basically paper shredder. Now imagine all of your stuff that you took so long to acquire to keep yourself safe, like your favorite blanket because you found a blanket to be able to keep you warm at night, maybe your backpack full of stuff. It might not seem like anything significant to anybody else, but it's significant to you. Everybody's got their favorite teddy bear. Everybody's got their medication that's important to them, but nobody else understands. Imagine everything taken from you and just put through this paper shredder and you don't have access to it anymore. How destabilizing would that be? This happens all the time. And so to go back to the red tape and the regulations, we need to lower the barrier to get access to homeless services. We need to lower the barrier to get into housing. The way that I've been thinking about talking about this differently, because there's so much stereotyping on our unhoused. And I've been so frustrated with the tone that Spencer Pratt has especially been taking, which is similar to Donald Trump's, which is the way that they talk about the unhoused as if they are criminals. I'm sorry, you cannot be a criminal just because you are poor, especially when the system is the one who actually created your poverty. Right? Mm-hmm. We need to fight poverty, not the poor. We need to stop criminalizing our Angelinos who are saying, I'm in crisis. Like every normal human being, all of us go through crisis at some point. Mm-hmm. I'm in crisis. I need help. And then you're treated like a criminal because we don't have the support network that we need. We fall into further poverty. We fall into further crises, crisis after crisis after crisis. And I'll tell you, I myself lost my job during the pandemic for 8 months, also lost a relationship in that same time. And then my mental health started to kind of get funky, right? And I was a single mom of 2 kids. And I was like, and it was during the pandemic, right? Right. Multiple crises. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. I was in a deep, dark hole. I had to climb myself out of there. But I was lucky enough to have stable housing. And I was lucky enough to have, during that time, President Biden had passed for 6 months that this government would pay for COBRA-ing your healthcare. And also it took me many months to figure out the unemployment situation because I got stuck in it again, an administrative problem with my unemployment. So I was kind of freaking out. But because I had those safety nets, I was able to stay at least stabilized, particularly in housing, so that I could climb myself back out and then get that job, which is the current job that I have now, which is Deputy Director at Housing Now, which has been fantastic. And I love it. And I feel so supported there. And I'm getting paid a good wage. And I'm able to actually do meaningful, good work. I only need one job and I can provide for my kids, right? So what if we had those safety nets for people in crises? What if you were in crises and you said, hey, I lost my job and then I now can't afford rent and then I got evicted, and now I'm struggling. I need serious help. What if we provided that? Our unhoused individuals, we call them homeless, but what if we were to just say they're a human being who's in crisis, and we provide what crisis experience you're having right now? And that is with a house. That is with good, meaningful jobs. That is with job training. That is with mental health provision. That is with physical health provision, right? Like if we could provide the basic needs that people need just to survive, a bathroom, a clean bathroom, a clean shower, clean water, right? Clean air, right? Transportation, fast and free buses. That's why I'm campaigning on that, because transit is the second biggest cost of our income after housing. So if we could provide free transit through our local dash buses for LA residents, that means people could get access to the resources they need. So they could go to the HOPICS office and figure out how they can get the help that they want. They can go and get job counseling to figure out how to get that job they need, instead of counting the dollars or wondering if their pass is going to cover enough rides for them to be able to stop by the garden to take a deep breath before they're heading over to the next job interview, right? People literally miss job interviews because they don't have money to ride the bus. Like, that is a reality. That is what's happened to my friend. So I'm totally going in a different direction. You asked about red tape, but
because it is a series of unfortunate events that lead to these things. And I think a lot of people they have never lived that life that like you have and that I have, where a mistake or some average thing totally decimates you.
Right.
And I think a lot of times people, they don't understand how close all of us are to that being our situation as well.
Right.
Most
right,
of us.
exactly.
Most of us.
Everybody goes through trauma. It's just, were you lucky enough to be born into a family where you were set up to have the support? Or were you somebody who was disenfranchised because you were born Black in LA, and we've had redlining and structural racism and classism for, decades now. And you were never given the opportunity to succeed, and you were only relegated to certain employment opportunities because of the color of your skin or because of the fact that you spoke a different language when you first moved here, right?
Yeah. Or mental illness, or even
trauma,
it's not even
from
that
war.
like it is so much even smaller than that. Like you said, like missing the bus and not getting to a job interview, or just things that could be different, that are not complete overhauls of everything, but are achievable things that are just simply not happening.
Right. Exactly. So your question was, so how am I going to get people who are unhoused into homes? Right. Because that's an important question a lot of people are asking, because what we've seen is not working. So what I plan on doing that is different is, I do not think our current Care Plus sweeps structure works for our unhoused. Because like I said, if you destabilize people over and over again, they will not get stabilized, right? That's just basic math. That's just basic reasoning. So what you need to do is actually provide people with the basic needs that they have. So instead of a team that's focused on sanitizing the street as opposed to getting people care, what if we actually had a team that was focused on real care with compassion? What if you had a street outreach team of dedicated mental health, social workers, the people who can provide the basic, a doctor, a nurse, provide the basic needs that people are facing on the streets, build trusting relationships, because we have not done that. That's why our unhoused do not trust people who go to them, because what reason do they have to trust our service workers when the main people who usually they're encountering are LAPD with guns, right? We are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in liabilities. Primarily, the vast majority of that is coming out of the fact that our unhoused have been wrongfully assaulted for being simply poor, right? And so what if we were to actually have an street outreach team developing these close relationships? We've already identified locations where we can help people get into housing immediately, and they can help them get their needs met. We have money coming from Prop 1, which is going to help with mental health, which is going to help with addiction and recovery. So we know we have funding for that already. We need to make sure that we connect the dots between the services, between the city and the county, and the housing opportunities that we have, and also making sure that we're building not just affordable housing that's going to be unavailable in 55 years again, but permanent affordable housing. And so if we connect the dots between all of those programs and departments and offices, through my Office of Housing for All to ensure that we're working together and while preventing homelessness. Because one of the main things that's causing homelessness, of course, is tenants who lose their tenancy because of eviction processes, whether illegal or because they, can't pay. So we try and we ensure that we are preventing homelessness, and we're providing emergency funds for those who are especially on fixed incomes, who, when their rent goes up, they can't provide it. And we also provide support to ensure that we have emergency funds in those circumstances. The other thing I plan on doing as well, by the way, is I will, as mayor, commit to co-sponsoring bills to actually change our rent control laws. Right now, Costa-Hawkins is a state law that prevents us from passing stronger rent control locally, which is why the only rent control units we have here in Los Angeles are older buildings. So what if we actually were able to expand the amount of rent control we could have so that we could stymie the rising rents that we just can't keep up with? This is a structural change. Instead of short-term fixes, which is costing us hundreds of thousands of dollars. Karen Bass, for example, has her Inside Safe program. Hundreds of thousands of dollars going to waste into hotels and motels, extremely costly. I just spoke with 2 days ago somebody who's in the Inside Safe program who got a knock on his door, was told by his caseworker, you have to vacate your room in the Mayfair Hotel with 60 other people because the funding was just cut, and so you have to move again. And I asked him, well, how long have you been in it? He's been in the Inside Safe program for 2 years.
And now they have to move?
He's moved twice now already, and now he has to move a third time, and he's really anxious about where he's going to move, what the situation is going to be. The Inside Safe program is not working. It was designed specifically to get people into permanent housing. But no, we're just spending hundreds of millions of dollars. There's no end in sight, and it's just going into a costly short-term Band-Aid solution. What people are looking for is permanent housing. And you can't just put them isolated in a hotel by themselves. You need to ensure that they have holistic services. You need to ensure that they're connected with community. We need to provide opportunities for counseling, for job counseling, for mental health counseling. We have to think about this in a cohesive manner instead of what we've been doing. And so what I want to shift, and by the way, something that Councilmember Nithya Ramana is suggesting is instead of the costly hotels and motels, she wants to switch to vouchers. So we pay for vouchers. Again, the problem is it's still our tax dollars going into a short-term solution. It needs to not keep going into short-term, we're paying for a no end in sight situation, but we need to actually build permanent solutions, and that is permanent housing. And we need to build it all over the place. We need to build it in every single part of the city that we can. Not in high fire sites, of course, that is unsafe. So we do need to be smart about that. As we're rebuilding Palisades, we need to ensure that we're building it that fits the environment and the fact that disaster might come again. So we need to be smart about it. But we do need to ensure that as we're building, we are building smart. And we need to ensure that we're building with affordability in mind. And we need to ensure that we're building as much as we can and prioritizing our city dollars into social housing, our city dollars into truly affordable housing. And as we're building, ensure that there's strong tenant protection. So as we're building, we're not displacing more people. And so we need to have all those things in mind. The thing is, we can. It is possible.
Right. That's what I was going to add, is that there's models already that exist in other countries. And also, as someone who's been working on the ground, and I'm sure you know this too, a lot of the stuff that's frustrated me is that I've been told, well, we can't possibly do this, we can't possibly do that. And I see volunteers and people who are not paid filling those gaps, doing that, street medics or people providing clothes and food. Like, I am always so upset to see the average person putting in the work, and it's very lovely, and we do it because we love to, but I'm often struck by, like, why isn't the city doing this? So you're not proposing anything wild.
No, I'm proposing what we are doing, but the city is not doing it. So what if we were to flip the script and the city see Angelenos as the leaders in the charge of solving our problems?
Right.
What if the city was to walk alongside and partner with local organizations who are doing the good work? That's the shift. That's why I'm a community organizer and I'm on the ground. We are seeing success. We're seeing our local, street outreach teams led by pastors, led by community neighbors who just care about their neighbors, are doing the good work to keep people housed, are getting people into permanent housing. We are celebrating that. So Why is a city doing the opposite and instead criminalizing our poor, instead discounting and not doing the work of actually caring for our folks? And by the way, I want to throw out, I met with a lot of our animal welfare advocates in the city recently. I've been meeting with them over the last couple of months. I myself am the mother of a rescue dog, so this is a very close part to my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I've been hearing I physically have seen now so many cases where our inhumane treatments of our animals in the animal shelter, in that we are just euthanizing left and right these animals that are coming in, and it's so despicable. Meanwhile, it's our neighbors. Meanwhile, it's our organizers on the ground in Skid Row running clinics for our unhoused residents who also have pets, to make sure that their pets are getting their shots, to make sure that their pets are getting spayed and neutered, so we're preventing illegal breeding, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to enforce the laws to ensure that our animals are taken care of. And guess who's doing that? It's us having to advocate for it, not the city. The city's just been cutting the budget for animal welfare time and time again. And recently, as you might have seen, Mayor Bass's proposal for the budget includes cutting the safe parking program and cutting more animal welfare, resources, including the dogs, including a time for dogs to go out for a break. Otherwise, they're just stuck in their kennels at these shelters day in, day out, they're not going to be socialized, and then they're considered unsocialized dogs, never be able to be socialized dogs, and they get euthanized. By the way, I just have to go into the story about safe parking. The other day, I went to the LACC campus, the community college in Los Angeles Community College. There was a student who came up to me and said, "Hey, you're Rae Huang. I am so excited about your campaign. I'm supporting you. I'm a conservation student here at LACC." And as I got talking to them, they said, "Oh, I mentioned, I don't know if you heard, but I've been, advocating to hold safe parking." And then they said, "Wait, what do you mean? What's happening to safe parking?" And I said, "Well, it's getting cut." And they said, "They can't cut it. I literally am sleeping in my car right now, and I'm relying on the safe parking program to be able to go to school and to be able to survive. So that way, in the middle of the night, I can go to a safe bathroom to be able to take care of my needs." Right. And it's part of how I'm surviving right now. These are direct dollars that support our community members. And here we are cutting significant, important, necessary programs for all Angelenos, whether you're 2-footed or 4-footed, right? And we have to be able to protect our own right now. And instead, we are raising the dollars for the police budget. Meanwhile, we're giving more money to the police who's attacking our protesters. It's despicable. It makes no rational sense when we've already seen that when we have less police, we have less crime. So the police don't correlate to how much crime there is. No, they come after the fact, after crimes occurred.
Well, it's also we know that crime is down in Los Angeles, but they behave as if it's up. They hold these meetings saying "Oh, well, we're doing something about burglaries, but burglaries are actually down. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense."
Yeah, it's propaganda.
Yeah. So this is the next thing I wanted to talk about, because my big thing has been dealing with LAPD and dealing with DHS and ICE downtown, but also all over the city. And that really shook up my life a year ago when I went downtown and I witnessed the National Guard and the Marines entering Los Angeles. And it's been maddening to be treated like adversaries by our mayor, and to be treated, we went to the mayor's house to try to speak to her, and she came out and was like, "I don't have to be talking to you guys." You could see the videos of it. It was extremely combative. That has been the thing. That has been the thing most of this year with regards to Karen Bass, was it's combative, and it is that way with a lot of council members too, where they're very defensive. So you come up to them and you're upset about something, and the response is to be defensive about what you're saying about them, in taking it personally in this very immature way, I find. But so the big thing is LAPD. I wanted to read a little bit from this article that Katie LaFoon wrote. Basically, it just kind of sums up, over the last year, press and protesters have been targeted by LAPD. Mayor Bass doesn't say anything about it. She kind of doesn't really say anything about ICE. She talks she sends out a press release whenever a wall gets spray painted. There's so many terrifying videos. And one of the big things that's been happening on May Day, LAPD showed up right away, started, and then was arresting journalists. Then you go to the LAPD police commission meeting and they say, well, we had to because we don't know. Journalists are not allowed to be at crime scenes, which is not a thing. And also, we don't know who's actually a journalist. You can only be a journalist if you're approved. You have a good relationship with us, which again is not a thing. And then duly
No
appointed.
freedom of press.
Insane. But then you go from there to city council and you have Marquise Harris Dawson saying, well, I'm really glad that no one was arrested on May Day.
Oh my goodness.
I'm like sending it to my friend being like, if you want to know why I'm insane over the past year, like this is why.
Yeah.
And it's just been so jarring to watch business as usual as as like a LAPD just does what they want. And I don't think there's any incentive for them to change or do anything because there's never any
accountability
change or response and nobody stands up to them. Like I keep being like, my thing is, and I've been saying this, like I don't think Karen Bass is the mayor. I think Jim McDonald's the mayor.
Yeah, that's such a true statement.
So I'm like, I don't even know what you do.
Right. The LAPPL is probably the most powerful union. I don't even like to call them a union, an association, a gang, if you will, than any other institution in the city. And they're notoriously classist, racist, homophobic, sexist, right? Like historically, corruption, we've seen the movies and the movies are based on real true stories, right? There is no accountability on the LAPD. In this moment, when our families are under attack, we are rising up. Angelenos are coming together and calling for a stop. And we're holding the line. We're not only speaking up, we're not only marching non-violently, holding signs, chanting, we're showing up at meetings. We're passing out whistles. We're getting educated through rapid response. We're showing up at schools to make sure as graduation's occurring over these next few weeks that no ICE comes around to prevent our families from being able to celebrate the successful graduation of their son or daughter or kid. This is what Angelenos are doing because LAPD is not doing their job to protect and serve us. Right. So we go out and we say, hey, ICE is hurting and terrorizing our families. We don't agree with the federal government is doing. And then guess what happens? We get assaulted, taken up. I was at the Metropolitan Detention Center, on the last No Kings rally day. And I saw friends getting picked up by the police and arrested, right? I heard of a case directly from the victim herself about being sexually assaulted by this police officer, taking advantage of his position of power. Like these are things that cannot be happening in our city. When we talk about real public safety, let's talk about this, about the fact that it's our own police who care more about protecting capital and property than they do about the human beings that they were called to protect and serve. The fact that Mayor Bass time and time again keeps talking about vandalism over the lives of human beings who have been assaulted by the police and in some cases killed by the police with no accountability. I'm thinking of the Justice for Yang Yang, who's a Korean son. I was at the press conference recently where his father called 911, to say, my son's having a mental health break right now. I need help. And then the police came in and shot him. Of course. I'm sorry, that's not help. No. That's the opposite of help. And then there's no accountability. One of the things that a lot of folks are calling for, which I agree with, and I plan on finding a way to be able to carry this out, is the liability costs that the police is incurring in the city should be paid by the police.
Yes, it comes out of our taxes, our budget, when they do something wrong and we have to pay a liability. It comes out of, that's the biggest thing. Why is it not coming out of the police budget? Why are we paying for that?
Exactly. Something I very much strongly believe in. I've been part of the People's Budget LA Coalition for 6 years now. What they've been advocating for is a participatory budgeting process.
Where we decide
where our money should go.
Right.
Right? The best form of knowing the values of the city is our budget. Our budget is a moral document. It tells us exactly what we value. And if we are valuing the police over the rest, over housing, over job security, over health, over food security, I'm sorry, but our values are not right. And when you do survey people in the city on what they want, tens of thousands of people now have filled out the survey for 6 years. And at the very top, every time and time again, every year, guess what's at the top?
Housing.
Housing.
Yeah.
It's not the police, right?
Yeah.
It's housing, it's food security. After the fires, it was fire, like,
Mhm.
so people know what they need. They
Right.
know what will make them feel secure. But
Right.
we have to remind ourselves that the police come after a crime has occurred. I don't know if you've ever had to call 911 before, but when you were feeling maybe insecure, unsafe, you call the police and they're like, look, I feel unsafe because this situation is happening. Maybe there's a domestic violence situation. You're like, my partner is making me feel afraid. And the police say, I'm sorry, but I can't get involved until a crime occurs. And you're like, well,
Yes.
that's too late. I'll be dead by then, right?
Right.
Or I'll be hurt by then. So what if instead we had unarmed crisis responders to come and de-escalate situations,
Yeah.
right?
I can't do everything around here. Deadlines are slipping. I can't just do it all on my own. I need to hire someone. I needed an editor. And I was scrounging. How am I going to find an editor? It was a chaotic mess over here. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. I have personally used Indeed for years. I actually have been hired for 2 jobs off of Indeed. I was able to match my skills with jobs in my area. The only 2 times that I have been hired without any sort of in with the company was through Indeed. So I was pretty stoked to find the people I needed for this podcast and also to know that I could do that on a place where I have been hired. And if you're looking to hire someone, let's say you're the job looking to hire me, you can use Indeed sponsored jobs as a boost whenever you need to find quality talent. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. That's cuckoo bananas. And so speaking as someone who has been on both sides of the hiring spectrum, Indeed has helped me in real life spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs.
This is the new Weight Watchers, built for real life and real results, no matter what mode you're in. Maddie went all in for her big day and lost 33 pounds. Emily lost 85 pounds and hit her goal while still living her life.
Weight Watchers gave me the tools and I feel amazing.
Join the millions of members and lose weight with the #1 doctor-recommended weight loss program. Lose more at WeightWatchers.com.
At 6 months, participants in a clinical trial of Weight Watchers program lost an average of 12 pounds.
There is a problem where they believe that they should be afraid of us in a way that is wholly doesn't make any sense. One of the most jarring things I've ever seen was there was like cops in full riot. And then a friend of mine who's a photographer who is 5'4", maybe 100 pounds soaking wet. And the cops in riot gear were like, move slowly. Like they were afraid of him. And I was like, we've lost the plot. They are hopped up on their own supply, I think. And they're not seeing clearly what's going on around them in order to best serve public safety, even if they were. There's something about the way that they are viewing other people in the city as like not the same as them. And so it leads to this like overreach, power, what is it called? A power trip.
Yeah, it's us versus them. They're trained to be in war.
Us versus them, not working together.
Yeah, not seeing that, like, who they see, they're so primed to say, like, to be looking for the perpetrator all the time in the public, as opposed to seeing, like, this is us. How do we support and care for us as a community? How do we mediate situations so that way everybody can have their needs met? When they're in crisis, they can have the challenges that's causing the crisis to calm down, right?
Yeah.
There's so many people. My friend was just telling me, who was just here, he regularly takes the metro, and a lot of times he will experience somebody who's having a mental health breakdown on the train. And when you listen to what they're saying, they're actually like recounting as they're having a panic attack. They're actually oftentimes like saying, no, don't hurt me, don't kill me, no, stay away.
Yes.
They are literally going re-traumatized, like being in trauma because they're going through some sort of PTSD. And then we treat them as criminals. These are people who are calling for help, who are in crisis. What if we were to see each other as fellow human beings and the police don't see them as people who are having, as potential perpetrators who are having a moment and feeling like they're in war? Because a lot of our unhoused folks, by the way, are veterans.
Right.
So what if we were to actually see them as human beings who've been through trauma and we are helping them come back and rehabilitate from trauma.
Instead of inputting more trauma.
Yeah, exactly. Then we're creating more trauma. So how, if we really want to actually solve our societal issues, let's talk about real rehabilitation. Let's talk about real care. Let's talk about real health.
Here's my concern is that LAPD is so big and feels themselves untouchable. If they don't agree with you as mayor, or if they don't like, how can you stand up to them, or how do you feel comfortable going against them when it seems as though they have some ability to, I don't know what it is, but even council members that go in initially anti-LAPD and then come out, I'm like, what did they do to you? So like, that's my worry. I worry,
Yeah,
like,
right.
how can you, have you thought about that?
I have. And I want to be really like honest with you and with your listeners in that this is a real thing in the history of the US where the police, the FBI, we know of these cases where they have the ability to create a culture of fear and intimidation. There's a lot of corruption to be able to manipulate situations and manufacture, political perspectives. And we talked a little bit about propaganda, but it's real, right? Like in the sense that there have been cases where when someone is railing against the police and saying they're not doing their job, we need to hold them accountable, and then the police stop, they like don't show up to places and they show these numbers showing, oh, crime is rising, right? And it makes everybody afraid, and then everybody's like relying on the cops to and then they're in support of we need to raise the police budget, right? Like,
or the press conferences about how there's so many burglaries when burglaries are actually down. Like, they're very media savvy.
Exactly. And so here's the thing is that institutions sometimes want to keep themselves in power and keep themselves alive. The best scenario for us, we talk about this as a community organizer. The goal of my job as a community organizer is to work myself out of a job. So I no longer need to exist. So I don't have to fix the problem that I'm working on, like a housing crisis. What if we were to imagine the police as moving towards the process by which we no longer need the police? That is the defund the police movement. That is what police abolitionism is all about. It's about how do we reimagine a society and a system that move towards a place where we no longer need the police, where people's needs are fully met. Another way to counter this or talk about it is I was chatting with some transit riders on another podcast, riders from Nobody Drives in LA, another fantastic podcast, by the way. And one of I forgot which member of the podcast group was sharing this, but he had mentioned, he said, well, look, before we had police, we had soldiers. And soldiers were not exactly good at protecting us. So then they came up with the police force. And now we're saying, oh, well, you can't get rid of the police. We're just stuck with the police. Well, what if we said, well, maybe the police isn't like the best form. Maybe let's now evolve into something else that can help us move towards real public safety. That's the question I want to ask us. That's the question that I'm inviting the public to engage in. And so you asked the question originally. So how am I going to be able to stay accountable to being able to work towards moving power out of the police and into public hands so that way we could actually get what we need? Well, one of the ways I plan on doing that is I am planning on firing Police Chief McDonnell. So that's one, is having just different leadership who agrees with me and us about the perspective of what real public safety should look like, right? The second, I get to appoint people on the police commission. So I will be appointing people on the police commission who agree with me, who need to move into a different model of what public safety and community safety can look like.
Right.
Also, we need to have a full-on discussion about our budget, which is why participatory budgeting will help us determine where our money should go and where we want to prioritize our resources.
Right. People can have a say.
Exactly. And I will tell you, in Camden, New Jersey, I don't know if you're familiar, but I think it was a couple years before the pandemic. Camden, New Jersey was well known for how corrupt their police was and how high their crime was. They had a major problem on their hands. And the council and the public decided decided to get rid of their whole police department. They fired everybody.
Wow.
And why? Why did they do that? Well, because they had so much corruption, the crime was so high, so having police wasn't solving the problem. And the main reason, though, was because they couldn't actually reform or change their police department because the police lobby was so powerful. The only way they could get rid of their police lobby was actually just getting rid of their whole police department. So they did. They did. And then what they did is they fired everybody, and then the county police department started started hiring police officers, and people could reapply for position, and they decided whether or not they're going to take them or not. And they shifted into a community police option. Now, I'm not saying that we should do that, but I am opening the door for conversation for us to have a conversation truly and honestly in Los Angeles with a history of policing in Los Angeles about what is it that we want different, new, transformative for our city that actually moves us towards real safety. What could that look like? And we already have a model, which is the unarmed crisis response. That's been extraordinarily successful. So I do think that we need to expand that citywide. I think there needs to be also accountability in that process. We need to have transparency to ensure that that program is going to continue to be successful as we expand it out. We need to also be talking about and thinking about other ways that can lead towards real security. And I want to mention this because a lot of small businesses are really struggling, going back to the vandalism and with theft. And that's real. And I don't want to discount that because my friends who run small businesses are experiencing that.
Yeah, when I worked retail, they would smash the windows, like windows would get smashed all the time.
And also our small businesses are oftentimes the first responders, honestly, to people who are on the streets who have overdosed. And to people who are struggling with their rent. I was just talking to another small business owner who's been running her family business for 45 years after her mother, was saying that her mother would oftentimes, every so often, would have one of her clients who couldn't afford their rent and was going to be evicted, and her mom would pay for it. Our small businesses are so important to the community life. So we need to be supporting them. But is it the police who are going to be the ones to do that, to come in? Because the majority of thefts are not actually resolved by the police.
I know.
And you don't need an armed person to come in and figure out what's going on, right? We can have alternative solutions to be able to figure out. We need more. I love detective movies and TV shows, by the way. We need to resource civilian-oriented, we can think of alternative ways of being able to solve the big problems that we have around theft. And gang prevention, I think, is significantly important for our communities. I've talked to a lot of residents in South LA especially, where they've said, our gang prevention programs are what helped me, be able to succeed. And now I'm a community organizer, or now I'm a social worker in our community center, and so those have been really important programs, but we're not consistently funding and resourcing those programs. We need to be working with communities to provide the job placement support, opportunities for more union jobs to be available in our city so that people can have good, meaningful work, can feel secure so they're not turning to crime, and actually be able to live their lives well here in LA and not spend all their time in traffic. Got to always throw that out there because everyone hates traffic.
The buses would be a good idea. All of it, basically, a lot of the stuff with defund the police and all of this it's a scare tactic, because all that you're asking is for the people to have a say in how much police get out of the budget, which is in the billions. It is just, in my own research, the dog socialization program that you just mentioned was $1.6 million, and it was cut from the budget. Meanwhile, LAPD got an increase that was up to, even more billions. It's a huge chunk of our budget, in a way that if you took a look at it, Angelinos, you would be shocked. And it just keeps going up. A lot of it is liability. Why do we need a billion flock cameras? Why do we need all of this surveillance stuff, drones? They just said yes to drones. And why?
We're becoming a police state,
Literally, cameras everywhere, drones everywhere.
Yeah, we know what happens when we increase surveillance. Guess who uses it? These federal agents who see us as criminals because we're an immigrant, because we're poor. Anyway, I interrupted you. I'm just
No. You're fine. The thing that really made it all stand out for me was the way that the LAPD worked around ICE, where my naive self was like, well, these masked men are throwing people into vans, and so the police will stop them. And then there was this line of, they're not working with the federal government. They're not working with the federal government, even though we could see it with our own eyes. And then just recently, Jim McDonnell said at the police commission, well, we're not helping with immigration related enforcement. And all of us lost our minds because we were like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Like, he was like, well, we don't collaborate with them on immigration. Like in the moment of a raid, we don't collaborate with them, is what he was saying. And we were like, yeah, we know. And even that's a lie. Police commission is really wild. If you're listening to this, Angelinos, police commission is supposed to be doing running through what's gone on in the city with LAPD and then sort of asking for clarification, holding them accountable, things like that. If you ever attend a police commission meeting, bring a weed gummy or something because you're gonna lose your fucking mind. It's just, they just say, hey, did you do this? And then the police McDonnell says no, and then they go, okay.
Oh my goodness.
It's wild. And so that's been a lot of what I've had sort of my ability to dream big crushed. And then I think it's been, you know, lovely to hear. I would hope that people would hear about your campaign and hear the ideas and feel open in their hearts to believing in a better world and not a complacency that is already not serving us. So how hard, you know, like what do we have to lose in order to dream a little bit bigger?
Yeah. And we can have these things.
And they
It's
don't have to be
possible.
all at once. They don't have to be all at once. We're not saying, I mean, I'm not saying these big, massive, scary things, but if you're listening to this and you're on the fence and you even think, why are they taking the liability lawsuits and everything out of our money and not out of $1 billion police budget? That's a thing to think about.
Yeah. Just ask the question.
Just ask the question, babe. I wanted to just close off with talking about LA 28 and the Olympics and everything going on with that, because I do think we are fucked. And it ties into ICE, but it also ties more into local vendors getting fucked. Like, we were told that this was going to be a boon to our city, and now it's, you know, they're not allowing local vendors to be put forth contracts first, and there is no structure or housing or anything in place to make sure that we're not left completely decimated. Like Rio has almost never recovered from the Olympics that were held there. So I am scared.
Yeah, as we should be. I mean, we need to be realistic about whether or not the Olympics should happen in Los Angeles. You know, one of the things that I plan on doing when I'm elected mayor is start a task force that actually invites the question of, should we have the Olympics? Will this do more damage and harm than good? Unfortunately, this was decided by a previous mayor who clearly was not really thinking about the impacts it would make on our city financially. And of course, he had no knowledge at the time that Trump would be reelected into office. We have sort of a double effect on our communities, which is economically we're under threat because we're going to be on the hook for paying the billions of dollars if we cannot keep this budget under control. And we're already well over 6 months overdue to have a budget so that we know what we're on the hook for and what we're not on the hook for. And so this is not good. Like, we are not moving in the right direction, and we're really not that far away from the Olympics. Like you said, right, we already know that our local economy is not going to be benefiting from this because they're opening the door to outside companies to be able to win these contracts. So in what way is this actually going to help LA after all? We don't infrastructurally, are we ready for this? That's why we're increasing the police budget and all of these surveillance on us.
Right. Instead of housing or ways in which people could get to the Olympics without a massive traffic in cars. Just sort of anything.
Yeah. Let's talk about Airbnb, right? Most recently in this budget proposal from Mayor Karen Bass, it included already taking in money from Airbnb, kind of Airbnb gets to pay their taxes in advance of the Olympics, which means we're basically giving them a whole pass to say, yeah, you can buy more of the city. Meanwhile, we haven't even been enforcing the laws and regulations. Well, there's tons of illegal short-term rentals in our neighborhood. I know of many actually who have been run by my friends, you know, by my neighbors. Like, I know of them,
Right.
you know, and they haven't been held accountable, right? Like, we should be taking money from just in the enforcement of law, not taking in more money for Airbnb and other companies like that to buy our city. I'm sorry, we are not a city to be bought. This is our city, right? And then on top of that, the surveillance we've talked about, the attack on our trans communities already, the attack on our immigrant communities already from ICE, the attack on our unhoused. We've heard how President Trump already talks about our unhoused in such an inhumane way. Spencer Pratt has continued this type of just horrendous language around how we talk our unhoused, right? Like we already know that our communities are under attack. I don't want to see more banishment of my friends and neighbors from homes because we're allowing corporations to buy our city. No, this is our city. These are our neighbors. These are our families. We demand this to be a city for us. And so that's why I'm opening a task force to ask the questions of, does this actually benefit us? In what ways will it harm us? Let's make a smart decision to whether or not we should even have the Olympics.
Yeah. Airbnb buys up the city. There's nowhere for people to live. People get kicked out. They become unhoused. Then there's all these sweeps where they get the unhoused out of the city in order to make it look good for the Olympics. Meanwhile, it's like now it's like you and your friends, because you're not even, let's be real, you do not have the, like most of people, and even my age and younger, don't have the ability to pay an extra month of rent if something goes wrong, whatever. Then you're bussed out to the desert or wherever they're going to put the unhoused people because they don't want them on their squeaky clean streets in order to look good for the Olympics. And now all of the places you used to live, it's an Airbnb. Good luck. Like, and then you're a local vendor and you don't even get the contract to be able to get all the sales that are going to happen at the Olympics. So it's a nightmare.
It is a nightmare. It is a complete nightmare. And the groups that have been calling for no Olympics have right reason to be ringing the bell as loud as they can, because the question is this good for us? I mean, we can't even afford going to attend any of these events.
Right.
So
I know.
My brother really wanted me to buy tickets, and I was like, they're over $300 per person. Do you still want them? He's like, oh, never mind.
And also, I've spoken to you about this too, about how it's not just trans people, but they've instituted sex testing. And so now any woman in the Olympics has to go through sex testing. And we're just going to be cool with that. Yeah. We're going to just be like, you know what, women of Los Angeles, we say yes to this.
Yeah, it's absolutely just, we're like moving backwards in time in terms of the rights that we've had. And Los Angeles cannot go with the program. I mean, this is it's a threat on our lives, and we have to be honest with that.
It's very hard to not see sort of any moral courage standing up to the federal government, ICE, to anything that you can see is so clearly wrong. I had this idea that our mayor would get up and say, we're not gonna take this, and we're gonna and demand things. And it's been wild just to not see it happen. And then of course she went to pose with Trump in the Oval Office, and I was like, I'm gonna throw my computer out the window.
I thought it was AI when I saw that. I did. I was like, oh, that's funny. And then I was like, oh, wait, why does it keep coming up on my feed? Did this actually happen?
I'm surprised I didn't smash my computer. So thank you so much for joining us. Can you just anything else that you want to leave my audience with? Even us, I think a lot of them are in LA, but a lot of people are in other places in the US and are, if they're thinking about what to ask for their cities, or just anything you'd want to leave us with.
I appreciate that. Well, I'll say two things. The first is, I am asking for support. We're about 3 weeks away from the primaries, and so ballots have already dropped. People are already beginning to vote, and they're considering who to vote for. And so if you can come and join our campaign and volunteer, canvassing, door knocking, phone banking, text banking, that would be phenomenal. Come to our events and please contribute. If you're a Los Angeles resident, every dollar you donate will be matched 6 times, up to $257. So I'm asking anybody who lives in Los Angeles, please give the maximum matching donation of $257, because we will receive $1,800 in total with the city matching grants. If you don't live in Los Angeles, please consider contributing, because this is about building a movement for the whole country. This is not just about LA. We are fighting the fight for everybody, and we are trying to set the standard and the model for the kind of campaign and the kind of values that we hold here and the moral courage that we need right now. In particular, I'm proud to say that our campaign is community driven. We ran this campaign rooted in the idea that this was not going to be a typical political campaign that's about transactional relationships. This is about building future leadership for our city so that we're a movement and not a moment. We're not just winning in November. We are building the movement and building mass mobilization, and we're building people power and political education for the long term. There's a ton of political education material in our platform. I highly recommend all of you who are not unfamiliar to go and learn a little bit more about public banks, why that could be a model for your city. Learn about participatory budgeting, the People's Budget coalitions that we have actually across the country. And even we talked with people across the world about this. We need more democracy. We need more co-governance models where individuals and residents get to decide how their government should work. Don't rely on the top few people to decide everything for you, because you will never get what you need. Instead, you'll get power concentrated with just a few people who always end up becoming part of the establishment and end up becoming part of this oligarchy class. We need to disrupt that. And that means we have to set up new democratic systems like participatory budgeting, like people's assemblies, so that way we can actually have more democratic control. That's what makes my campaign actually very different than every other candidate who's running for office. For all the listeners out there, please consider getting involved in local community organizing, get involved in mutual aid organizations and rapid response networks, and then get involved politically. And I don't trust politics. That is why I'm running for office. So I want you who don't trust, I want you to become the person because you trust yourself. I want you with the person who has values and more courage to go in and disrupt the status quo and actually create the model of governance that we need. This is the moment for us to change things. We know, we feel in our bones and our bodies that we're not okay. But instead of sitting back and waiting for somebody else to do it, let's be the change that we need, right? Like that's the saying, and it's real because it's true. Because I was waiting for the OG to come and take care of the things and to fix the problems, and then it hit me. It hit me so hard in my face when Mayor Bass was trying to kill ULA, which is our measure, which is a wealth tax or a wealth transfer tax in LA that will be able for revenue that we can prevent homelessness and also build social housing and affordable housing. And I said, okay, where's my OG? And my OG didn't roll up. I said, all right, we are now the new OGs. So I just want to encourage folks who are listening to join the movement.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. And then the website is Raeforla.
Yes, RAEFORLA.com.
Perfect.
Yeah, come join. Actually, we have a new website drop. So when you check it out, it's beautiful. And I'm proud of our team for pulling it together. I have such an amazing team of volunteers and staff. Yeah, we're rocking. And I'm proud of what we're building. So yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Gabe.
Thank you for listening to 1,000 Natural Shocks, a Bad with Money podcast. This is a noted bisexual production, edited by Allie Mims. Logo art by Dakota Becker. If you like the show, please consider subscribing to the Substack, 1000naturalshocks.substack.com. The Substack has episodes of this show ad-free and also videos and also my original writing. It would mean so much to me if you would subscribe, even as a free subscriber. But a paid subscriber really allows me to keep doing this work, and I can't do it without you guys. Thank you so much. Okay, love you. Bye.